When we turn a kid's game into a business, it's a slippery slope. And I'm going to talk about that slippery slope as well. It's become a professional model. And look, youth sports will never be professional sports. 12-year-olds should never, ever, ever train like a professional. And if they do, they're going to get burnt out. And I'm going to tell you that right now. I have really good relationships with a lot of my athletes that I started coaching 4 years ago. Now that they are seniors, a lot of them are incredibly burnt out from basketball. But I don't think it's because they don't like the sport anymore. I don't think it's because they've played it too much. I think it's because they've had too much of a commitment. You are listening to the Beyond the Scoreboard Podcast, transforming athletes into leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Coaches, are you ready to take your passion for coaching and turn it into a full-time career? I know the challenges firsthand, but the Make Money Coaching Sports program helped me take BTG Basketball full-time. If you're tired of juggling coaching part-time and want to fully focus on doing what you love, this business accelerator will give you the tools and support to make it happen. Hit the link in the show notes below to learn more and start living your dream. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard Podcast, the podcast that is passing wisdom to coaches and parents who transform athletes beyond the game. So let's dive right into it. I'm your host, Coach Furtado, and I am going to tackle this big challenge that we're facing in youth sports. It's the entire system. Now, the entire system is broken. If you're coming and you're listening to this episode, it is something that is being talked about significantly online. It's being talked about with different podcasts, different athlete influencers. Got a lot of people talking about it. And I don't want to just talk about it. I want to talk about how BTG Basketball is part of the issue and how it's being a solution to the issue. So let's first talk about 53% of kids quit by the age of 13 because they lose interest. It's not fun anymore. And one of the big reasons is because 12-year-olds have become products. They have become commodities. This kid is $500, right? That is a sticker price. Let me get 8 of them. We're going to drill. You know, parents are the customers, right? It's a business, right? And this is how I make my livelihood. And when we turn a kid's game into a business, it's a slippery slope. And I'm going to talk about that slippery slope as well. It's become a professional model. And look, youth sports will never be professional sports. 12-year-olds should never, ever, ever train like a professional. And if they do, they're going to get burnt out. And I'm going to tell you that right now. I have really good relationships with a lot of my athletes that I started coaching 4 years ago when I was a freshman. Now that they are seniors, a lot of them are incredibly burnt out from basketball. And it's a privilege to be able to be burnt out from a great sport. But I don't think it's because they don't like the sport anymore. I don't think it's because they've played it too much. I think it's because they've had too much of a commitment. And you're going to have your select few athletes that love it. They want everything. They want the experience. They want the club basketball. They want the high school basketball. They want it all. They want to train on their own. Maybe if you're a parent, maybe you have that kid, but most kids aren't that way. Like the burnout rate I am seeing, for juniors and seniors, it's alarming. So those that are parents or coaches of middle school age level, we have an opportunity to kind of intervene and provide an experience where, hey, this is supposed to be fun, right? Now, of course, you're supposed to have standards and teach and discipline, and I'll talk about that as well. But look, the reality is we have to be more intentional. And you can't just sell minutes, or you can't just sell a spot, right? You have to sell a program where you really help develop young people. So I speak of all of this when it comes to basketball. Basketball is my realm. This is my expertise. I'm talking about youth sports because we want to make a change in all of youth sports. But I do know there are some nuances between other sports. So in the pros, right, you pay for a contract for performance. In youth sports, people think a fee guarantees a role, right? If I pay my money, my kid plays. Well, in what world does that prepare a young person to be successful beyond the game? Back in the day, you had to earn your playtime, but now you just pay for your playtime. And that does our kids a huge disservice. And I'm not going to lie, right? We were one of those clubs last year. because I wasn't intentional about the standards. I wasn't intentional about communicating and so here's what we're going to do this club season. We're going to be really intentional. These are the standards, right? Your player has to rebound X, play good defense X, contribute on offense X, right? We're going to have our standards that we communicate to parents how your athlete earns more playtime. We're going to be very transparent with the athlete, with the parent, because parents are really important. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't want to sit here and be like, parents are a huge problem, da 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 da. Like, we have a lot of fantastic parents in the program, and parents are the most important part of this athlete's journey. We as coaches have to work with parents. We got to invite them in. We have to collaborate together. And remember, who is our customer? It's a kid, right? They're a human being. They're a human being developing and going through all these challenges in terms of like social media. Could you imagine being a kid where all you're consuming is so much negativity? And there's a lot of things going on in the world that are really wrong. And this is not the podcast for that. So could you imagine consuming all that, right? If consuming all this information, this is what I should look like. Their amount of consumption of comparison is enormous. Right? So we have to build relationships with our athletes. We have to build their trust. And that is something that is really important as well. The last thing I'm going to touch on here before I kind of talk about BTG Way, our solution of intentionality, is 80% of coaches, 80% of American coaches have no training. I can't tell you the number of times I've coached, especially in AAU, against coaches who have no idea how to coach young people. There's a difference between coaching professional athletes to perform. Anytime, varsity level, varsity is the only part, in my opinion, of youth sports that you can treat like a professional, right? If you're playing varsity basketball, varsity baseball, there's a high level of standards for, and you're playing to win. And I'm not saying that you can't play to win, but I come from the Boys and Girls Club background. That's how I actually got into coaching. I understand the human development side of things when it comes to players learning how to actually play the game. We have to teach the game. If you want your athletes to become better rebounders, how are you teaching it? How are you, coach, becoming a better teacher? How are you educating yourself on psychological safety? Psychological safety is like the number one thing every single coach should have. We need to create safe spaces for our youth to fail, to connect, and to improve. I'm not saying you should not hold people accountable for their actions. We're actually going to, kind of do the opposite. And I'll talk about how BTG is going to do this. You want to have super high standards for our athletes to meet, right? There is a level of effort that is required. There's a level of how to be a great team player, because one of the things that I noticed, especially coaching boys, is this level of individualism and ego has reached new heights. And you wonder why. All kids care about is clips now. But there's a reason for it. That's their way of comparing. Like, when we are young people care about social status. And if they're going to have higher social status for having a better highlight clip, of course, that's what they're going to chase. We are human beings. So we have to understand that as coaches. You have to understand what you're fighting for. So if you want to create an environment where your athlete takes a charge, where your athlete takes great defense, you need to feature those athletes. Whether you're talking about social media, talking about internally. So what we do at BTG, we do dogs of the day. Last year, we let all the athletes vote for the dogs of the day. It could have been anyone. Now, what happens is they choose their friends sometimes. It's not always the best representation. Now, I will say actually 85% of the time, they get it right. Now, what I'm doing this year with our coaching staff, coaches get to choose 3 players that show great effort and energy. Now the players get to vote, right? It's a delicate balance, because I think where I have struggled as a coach, like where I've need to improve as a coach, is I got to give more structure. I got to give more accountability. I've given too much freedom to kids. Now, the problem is I saw the opposite, right? Where coaches gave no freedom. It's my way or the highway. Kids aren't going to buy in. This generation is not going to do that, right? You might be able to get that done if you're a highly effective coach and your X's and O's are highly effective. You may be able to get there if you have the right kids, but it's not for everyone. And that's 53%. That's one of the reasons kids are burning out. Now, kids need structure, point blank, period. They need structure. They need accountability. They need choice, though. They need some agency. So we're giving them choices here. So that's why I say, hey, you got 3 people to vote from. We're not choosing the dog of the day. You guys get to vote. Coaches get to choose who you vote for, though. And so those are some of the things we're kind of learning. And it's an ever evolving process. And I saw a really interesting reel the other day that was talking about how, you know, in the 80s, 90s, this was like kind of before me. I'm kind of like in this middle. I'm technically in Gen Z. I don't identify with any of these generations, millennial, Gen Z. I'm somewhere in the middle in my head, right? Obviously, I'm the oldest version of Gen Z. What happens here is that parenting style, right, back in the day used to be like all standards, no support, right? Like do this, do this, do this. And now we've moved to a model where we're so supportive, we have forgot to, you know, apply standards. And so what I want to talk about is we have to have that discipline. So when it comes to this model of professional sports, because it's not going away, right? I'm coming back to this. Youth sports is a business. It's a business is how I make my living. We as owners, business directors of youth sports have to be incredibly intentional and always have the athlete in mind, right? Is this policy for the athlete or is this for our bank account? Like that's really what you have to ask for. And I genuinely believe you can do both, right? Now, you're saying, oh, your sticker price is so high. And I get it. Like the cost per year, like I was doing some research here before this, the average cost is families paying like $1,000 a year. And some of y'all listening are probably like, damn, I wish I only paid $1,000 a year, because I was breaking down some of the math. If you are in our BTG program, like pretty much for a year paying full tuition, it is $4,000 to $5,000 a year. Like, dang, man. You're getting an entire experience, though, with BTG that is intentional, and we're helping you become a better young person, right? That will help you be successful beyond the game. So you're continuing to invest in them. And then we've also built a foundation to help remove that financial barrier for the kids that are committed and want to play. So we want to remove that barrier as well. It's the solution to fixing youth sports is a multi-year, at least in the basketball world. The NBA, someone needs to hold tournament organizers accountable to make sure that every team that plays in their tournaments, like if it's going to be a sanctioned tournament, that every coach that is representing at that tournament has some form of coach's education and understands child psychology, child safety, all these different things, the X's and O's, right? We are talking about youth sports. We're not talking about professional sports. And I'm not saying that we can't have super competitive sports, right? There are levels, there's stages. And so at BTG, we built a blueprint. From 9 to 11, it's the foundations. It's fun, right? We're just doing training. Maybe in the future, we'll do local leagues. Boom, 12 to 14, you start your club season. We start preparing you for high school. High school, boom, it's highly competitive, right? We do have our high standards. And obviously, we're giving them a high level of support to get there. But what's more importantly, what I'm doing now is creating junior coach programs. So those that are in our high school program can coach the younger ones. Those that just graduated, I have 2 kids right now that I'm going to hire on as coaches. So we're really helping prepare them for the workforce, right? That's the investment that you make in your athlete for BTG. All programs need to be, I'm not saying have the same exact curriculum or programming, but have the same exact goal in mind to be really intentional to building better people, better basketball players, better baseball players, better softball players, whatever. That's second. The number one part of any youth sport business should always be to help young people become successful beyond the game. So that's what we do at BTG Basketball. If you're local, right, please go to our website, check either come to a free session. You're interested in our club basketball program, you can check that out on the website as well. If you're global, you're a coach, you're listening, and you're not in Los Angeles, you can shoot us over a message, send me over an email, let me know some of your thoughts. Our goal at BTG, Beyond the Scoreboard, is to be a voice in youth sports, to change and transform how youth sports is, to obviously take it back to like how it used to be, right? It'll never be like that. It's never going to be like that again. But get back to having the kid be the number one reason we're all in it, not just the dollars. So if you got something from this, if you really enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, share it with a coach, share it with a parent. And we're going to need a team of people to be able to do this. So I appreciate you listening, and we'll be dropping another episode next week. Thanks, y'all. Coach Furtado out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend, coach, or parent you feel like would get value from this episode. It's our responsibility to impact as many parents and coaches who are the ones that are impacting our athletes. That's how we create a ripple effect. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to serving you all next week.